A supply chain attack is a cyber attack that targets an organization by exploiting vulnerabilities in its supply chain, such as third-party vendors, software providers, or hardware manufacturers. Instead of attacking the organization directly, adversaries compromise a trusted supplier or service used by the target, embedding malicious code, backdoors, or tampering with hardware and software to infiltrate the target environment. Supply chain attacks use indirect targeting. Adversaries attack a third party with trusted access to the target organization. They may compromise a software vendor's update server to deliver malware to the customers. Supply chain attacks use stealthy and difficult-to-detect attacks. By leveraging these trusted relationships or software, attackers often bypass traditional defenses like firewalls or antivirus systems. For example, a legitimate software update containing malicious code is unlikely to raise alarms. There can be a widespread impact with supply chain attacks. A single compromised supplier can impact multiple organizations using their services or products. A cloud provider breach affects thousands of customers. There are numerous types of supply chain attacks, such as software supply chain attacks, hardware supply chain attacks, third-party service attacks, open-source dependency attacks, and firmware supply chain attacks. Software supply chain attacks involve compromising software to introduce malicious code during development, updates, or distribution. The SolarWinds attack of 2020 involved attackers embedding malware and updates to the Orion IT monitoring system. For hardware supply chain attacks, tampering with physical devices during manufacturing or distribution is a part of a hardware supply chain attack. They may add hidden chips to networking equipment to enable unauthorized access. With third-party service attacks, exploiting vulnerabilities in third-party contractors, consultants, or service providers is involved. For example, attackers accessing a retailer's network via a compromised HVAC vendor's credentials. For open-source dependency attacks, introducing malicious code into widely used open-source libraries or dependencies is a method of attack. The event stream attack of 2018 involved a compromised NPM package used by many JavaScript developers. And firmware supply chain attacks, embedding malicious firmware into devices like routers, printers, or IoT equipment, Internet of Things, is involved in firmware supply chain attacks. For example, router firmware may be compromised to exfiltrate data from enterprise networks. How do supply chain attacks work? First, you have reconnaissance. Attackers research the target organization and identify third-party vendors or partners with access to the target systems. Next, you have the initial compromise. The adversary infiltrates the supplier through phishing, exploiting vulnerabilities, or insider threats. An example would be gaining access to a software vendor's development environment. Injection of malicious code or hardware is the next step as malware, backdoors, or tampered components are embedded in software updates, open source libraries, or physical devices. Next, there is the delivery to the target. The malicious update, software, or hardware is delivered to the target organization as part of a legitimate transaction. And finally, exploitation, as once inside the target environment, the attacker leverages the compromised system to escalate privileges, exfiltrate data, or deploy additional malware, or all of the above. Notable supply chain attacks: SolarWinds in 2020. Attackers compromised SolarWinds Orion software, embedding malware in legitimate updates with over 18,000 customers, including U.S. government agencies, downloading malicious updates. Kaseya VSA in 2021, a ransomware attack on the Kaseya VSA remote monitoring tool affected managed service providers, MSPs, and their clients, impacting thousands of downstream businesses encrypted by ransomware. NotPetya in 2017, where attackers compromised the software update mechanism of Ukrainian tax software MeDoc, delivering ransomware disguised as legitimate updates. This impacted global disruption, including companies like Maersk and and Merck. In 2018, EventStream, where a malicious actor added a backdoor to the popular NPM package EventStream to steal Bitcoin wallet keys. Developers unknowingly included this compromised code in their applications. There's great risk and consequences associated with supply chain attacks. You have an extended attack surface where organizations depend on multiple suppliers, each of which can introduce vulnerabilities. Breaches in trusted third-party software or hardware undermine customer confidence and create a loss of trust, and there is widespread impact with a single attack affecting multiple downstream entities, amplifying the damage. Sensitive data may be stolen through compromised supply chain components, and malicious updates or compromised hardware can cause system outages or functionality issues. Vendor risk management is one of the ways to defend against supply chain attacks. Assess and monitor the security posture of all third-party vendors. Require vendors to comply with security frameworks like ISO 27001 or SOC 2, the SBOM, Software Bill of Materials. Maintain a detailed inventory of all software dependencies, libraries, and updates to trace vulnerabilities. Code auditing. Review and test third-party code for malicious or insecure components before deploying it into production. Zero Trust Architecture, ZTA, is very helpful limiting trust between systems and vendors, verifying every access request, applying least privilege principles to vendor accounts. Patch management is also important with quick application of updates and patches, reducing the risk of exploiting known vulnerabilities in third-party software. Network segmentation is essential to isolate critical systems and prevent compromised supply chain components from affecting the entire network. And threat intelligence sharing. Participate in industry threat initiatives to stay informed about emerging supply chain threats. You might join ISACs, Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, for example. Supply chain attacks are very relevant to cybersecurity professionals, of course, as they have high impact and low detection. Supply chain attacks exploit trusted relationships, making them harder to detect but capable of causing widespread damage. And they have global dependencies. Many modern organizations rely heavily on third-party software and hardware, which increases their exposure to supply chain risks. It's very important for regulatory compliance. Many regulations like GDPR and NIST standards require organizations manage third-party risk as part of their overall security strategy. For proactive defense, cybersecurity professionals must implement robust defenses and policies to mitigate these attacks before they occur, ideally. Supply chain attacks continue to rise as adversaries recognize the vulnerabilities inherent in global interconnected systems. By understanding these threats and implementing comprehensive defense strategies, cybersecurity professionals have a better chance to protect their organizations and stakeholders.